And we're broadcasting now, and we'll give a few minutes for folks to join in. It usually takes a minute or so, but as we're getting rolling here, happy to say that it is Wednesday, October 27th, and I want to welcome everybody to the Digital Roundtable. We have a great guest today, and I see the gallery it's growing. Looking forward to today. It is another beautiful day in Austin, Texas, where I am today. Clear skies, nice temperature, beautiful weather. And let me ask John Butler to get us rolling with some music, and we'll start things off.
In the early morning rain, with $1 in my hand, with an aching in my heart, and my pockets full of sand.
Excellent. Thank you, John. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. We had a big storm roll through here last night and woke up, everything was wet, but it's a great day in Austin, Texas. It's a lot going on in my world. It's a lot going on in the university's world, but more importantly, we like solving problems through technology transfer and doing great things. So it's good to be here and good to see everybody.
Excellent, excellent. Llewelyn, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. All is well here, Andres. We too had a big storm in the night. I came out fine. We have our electricity, but in New England, there are 600,000 people without electricity as a result of the storm. Not so nice.
Well, hopefully our compatriots up north will tighten things up and bring those lines back into service really quick. We have a great guest today. Darren Schauer. Darren, how are you, sir?
Good, Andreas. Good to be with all of you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for being here today. For those of you that don't know Darren, Darren is the General Manager, Chief Executive Officer of Guadalupe Valley Electric Co-op, headquartered in Seguin, Texas. We are lucky to have him today, and hopefully we'll learn quite a bit. GVEC, as it is called, in short, sells electricity as a co-op to its members, and it also sells internet services and home energy services, and we'll learn more about what those are. I'm really excited about the opportunity to share with him. Darren, needless to say, has a Bachelor of Arts in Agricultural Economics from Texas A&M University, and I hope that John Butler is okay with that.
Well, I guess I can do. I love the Yankees. I loved them better when they were in the Big 12, but as an LSU grad myself, they're
you're coming to join us. You're going to come join us.
There you go. Finally, UT's following A&M on something.
There we go.
So Darren, as a chief executive in a very prominent industry, probably the most critical industry ever now that we're trying to electrify the planet on everything. Sitting from your perspective, give us a sense for, clearly we're in the middle still of a pandemic. We have changed administrations. The economy has changed because the actors are changing things and the rules of the game. Tell us a little bit about the journey of COVID in the economy, and how is the business, and any lessons learned on how you are doing business now.
Yeah, I guess I would just say I've been in the business now for a long time. Closing in on 30 years now, and this is a time that in my career anyway that I cannot remember where we have seen so much dramatic change happening within our industry and the industries that we are involved with. And not just the changes so much as the challenges that we're being faced with, whether it is the pandemic, the winter storm, technological changes, whatever it is, it just seems like we're being bombarded with all sorts of challenges to our business. From a COVID perspective, we feel like we're in a fairly good place at this point in time. We certainly had our challenges, like all communities and businesses did across the country and across the world. We've had to change the structure, a lot of our structure and the way that we work. Technology certainly had a big impact on that, allowing our folks to begin to work from home. We learned a lot from that process. And in fact, we still have a number of our folks that continue to work from home until this day, and really have no plans to come back full time to the office. Certain positions that works very well, whether it be accounting or engineering or GIS or IT, those kind of positions we found that really work well for them to be able to work remotely. We do still like for them to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week because we like to see their faces. We think it has an impact on the culture. So we've done that. For us, the winter storm back a year ago now, almost a year ago in February, had a significant impact from a financial perspective. GVEC is very involved in the power supply markets here in ERCOT. We're an independent cooperative, so we manage all of our own power supply on our own. And certainly that in itself created numerous challenges for us. And we're still trying to dig our way out of some of those challenges. And of course, just the impact that had on the industry here in Texas. And now the rules that are being considered and changes to the market that are being considered are ongoing. We're working with the Public Utility Commission and certainly monitoring the Public Utility Commission and looking for what rules may come out of that. So that's certainly been a challenge. Then you add those things on top of just technology in itself and how that is impacting our industry. It's just, as I said in the beginning, this is in my career, I cannot remember a time where we had so many different challenges that we faced at the same time.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that one of the trends that you've talked about are the people who are not coming back to work. Here in Austin, in talking to Austin Energy, when they informed people that they did not have to come back to the office, many of them sold their homes, made a big bundle, and moved to Seguin and other desirable places. And I think that is a trend that's happening around the country. And I wonder what's the ramifications for having 2 jobs, or the ramification for having another job while you're working. And so as that trend continues, what do you think would be the impact, not only on your industry, but the entire work structure? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I worry about it to some level, in that not having, I'm traditional. So, having folks here in the office, being able to see them every day, and the culture that you're be able to create by having them next to you and close to you. I'm having to change my beliefs though, and my way of thinking in regard to the workplace. And because it really is creating more flexibility for the workforce. As I mentioned, those types of jobs that can work from home, whether it's in accounting or engineering or GIS or IT, all those positions, they don't have to have traditional work schedules. They don't have to be here from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. And so the workforce in today's world really likes that. They like the flexibility that brings the work-life balance that can bring. And so I'm having to get more used to that type of work structure. The other thing it does for us though is it increases the talent pool that we have available to us, because before you had to be local, you had to be here next to our office and be able to get into the office. Whereas now, while we haven't quite gotten to this point yet, it will open up the talent pool that we will have available to us to compete for these positions that we have. And so that's the exciting part about it, I believe.
Llewelyn?
Yeah, I'd like Darren, for you to give us some picture of the size of your organization. How many meters? Are you electricity and gas, or only electricity? And how did you come through the crisis in February? Also, I'd like to know where you located in relation to the bigger cities that
Sure.
people might know.
Okay. Yeah, GVEC, we're located here in South Central Texas. So we actually on the western end of our service area, our neighbor is San Antonio. So we're right against San Antonio. So a lot of our service area is the suburbs of San Antonio, going up the I-35 corridor toward Austin. So we have a pretty substantial growth rate going on with small communities, like not small anymore, New Braunfels, San Marcos, and the outskirts of those communities along the 35 corridor. So our service territory, though, then does stretch another 120 miles to the east. So there's lots of our area that's still very rural as well. We serve about 90,000 electric meters. We're not in the gas business. We are in the broadband business. So we have fiber to the home and reaching just over 20,000, right at 20,000 customers today in the broadband area, whether that's fiber to the home or high-speed wireless. And then we're involved in other businesses as well. We're involved in energy technologies that are tied into the home, primarily distributed energy technologies, solar, battery, heating and air conditioning systems that we sell and install and maintain. So that's kind of just a broad picture of who GVEC is.
On the technical side, what is your biggest challenge? Is it switching these complex sources of electricity? What is your biggest technical challenge day in and day out?
Yeah, it's not necessarily technical, but my biggest challenge every day in today's world is power supply and managing the power supply here at ERCOT. We've seen a lot of disruption in the industry after the storm. A lot of the rules were being changed. So that's where a lot of my time is focused. Technically, right now, just thinking of technology in itself, we're in a large scale project, what we call data analytics. We're trying to bring data into the formats, into a format that we can use it. We have these different pools of data, whether it be on the electric side or the internet side, or what we call our beyond the meter services, and trying to bring that data together. That's a pretty big challenge that we're faced with right now and are working on.
Yeah, so Darren, related to what you said, in my world and in Austin here, and indeed throughout the state of Texas, ERCOT has become a household name. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was ERCOT. Is that a grocery store? ERCOT, what is that? All of a sudden, people are asking me, and even in my, what's ERCOT? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, your industry has been politicized to a great extent. Right. And usually that means lobbying and those kind of things. So when you think about the change in the political atmosphere and how you are now at the center of everything as winter approaches. So you have taken the place of the Dallas Cowboys going to the Super Bowl. You've taken the place of the Texas Aggies going to the SEC championship game. All of a sudden, you are front and center of the political apparatus in the state of Texas. And I'm sure that's been an interesting kind of transition to all of a sudden when you say ERCOT, people understand what that is. So how do you approach it? Do you add different people? Do you have lobbyists now? Do you have an interaction with ERCOT that you didn't have before? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think just from a public perspective, it's just a matter of education. So we have spent a lot of time this last year, or since February anyway, helping folks understand who ERCOT is, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, and what their role is here in the industry here in Texas. There was a lot of misinformation that was going around during the storm itself, a lot of mischaracterizations about what ERCOT had the ability to do. And so we have really worked hard on educating our members, our customers, as well as just working closely with our own state representatives and working with senators, along with our statewide association and their lobby team, making sure that our voices are being heard and that as these changes are being proposed, that we at least have a seat at the table and our points of view are getting across. But yeah, we don't necessarily like being in the limelight. We like for things to be calm and for folks not to have to think about us. And, we certainly are in a very critical industry, of course, but we don't want people to have to think about it. We want the lights to come on when they flip the switch, and we want it to be a reasonable cost. And if we can keep it that way and kind of stay in the background, that's where we really like to be.
How much of your power supply do you generate yourselves?
We don't generate any. All of ours is purchase power contracts. So we have numerous different suppliers here in ERCOT. It's very competitive. You have lots of suppliers, whether it be for, the big guys, Morgan Stanley, Nextera, AEP, Mercuria, Shell, all those different entities here in ERCOT that we purchase power from. But we don't actually own any generation ourselves.
Are you finding it difficult to sign new contracts for power? I understand there's a lot of demand coming from the new high-tech companies that are moving into Texas and need a lot of power for data mining. Yeah, our only challenge right now is the cost. Certainly we can get it, it's available, but the prices have really turned on us for two reasons. One, there's large demand here in Texas, as you mentioned, as well as natural gas prices being driven up. That's having a more and more of an impact on the prices here in Texas as well. So we have the ability to go contract, and we have contracted for a large amount of our power already for the coming winter. But there's still more for us to do. We have access to it. It's just a matter of what we're willing to pay at this point. And at this point, it's still very high price.
Yes, on the technology side, you had mentioned the development of analytics and how that might help your business. And, not only has the grid become a topic among grid people, but it's been a topic now among scientists. And that is, how can you fully automate the grid? How you can go to the grid edge and automate it and make sure that everything is done not by hand when the loads are changed. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of discussion in the academic journals, as has been before, a lot of discussion among engineers, and a lot of discussion about the fact that the technology is here to automate the grid, mm-hmm. such that your company will not have to worry about changing the load by hand or ERCOT. Rather, that would be automated. So can you talk some about the analytics that you're receiving, the kind of data you're receiving, how that can help your business, and how do you think about the automation of the grid?
Yeah, and just the automation itself, we are experimenting today with some of that, with the ability to do what we call self-healing of the network. And so we have numerous circuits on our system here locally that are tied together, that have the ability to sense faults and then analyze the voltages from the two different paths and make the decision as whether to close back in on its own without human intervention. And so we're already doing part of that. It's more of an experimental level, although it's out in a real life environment. And so we fully expect that as that continues to evolve, and as we continue to have success with that type of automation, you'll continue to see that on the grid. Of course, we already have the ability from a remote setting, being able to control devices from our control center and things of that nature. But truly self-healing, we're starting that now. We're starting to experiment with that now. Speaking to the analytics and our ability to use that data, it really goes then beyond the electric grid and gets into the actual homes and the businesses that we serve. And that's where we're long-term looking to be able to have systems in place to know exactly what each individual home is consuming at that time. If they have solar there, if they have battery storage there, being able to integrate those technologies into our planning decisions and our operational decisions at some point. So we're on the very, very early stages of that. But because of the other areas that we're involved with, that we're working directly with our members, selling these batteries, installing the batteries, we have the broadband communications to their homes. We're involved with solar systems and installing those at people's homes. Being able to integrate that at some point in the future is what I think is going to be interesting and critical but you have to have the data and the analytics and the systems in place to be able to do that. And we're again in the very early stages of that.
If I can add to that, it's I actually believe personally, it's my own personal opinion that Darren's model and what he's doing as a business is actually the model of the future. Think about it. He's delivering kilowatt hours in the traditional sense, but he's also the internet and the telecommunications company to the premise that he's delivering that kilowatt hour, meaning that he can build any reliability, connectivity, control back and forth with that kilowatt hour. And to top it all, he's installing solar panels, energy storage batteries, and also integrating charging infrastructure into his grid. And so, that is the ultimate win-win-win when you think about a grid that goes to the edge, becomes, buildings become the power plant of the future. But so I wanted to ask you something to give us context, Darren. When you look at the industry 10 years ago and your growth rate annually and the changes that were going on, give us a sense of that today. How much faster are you growing? And now that your business model is accelerating, where do you see the growth happening, residential, commercial, industrial? Give us a sense of that 10 years ago versus now.
Yeah. Our particular area has really just seen really good, solid, steady growth over the last 10 years. And it hasn't been so rapid that we haven't been able to keep up with it. It's been really good, steady, 2-3% growth every year, year over year. We are seeing some of that starting to change with more and more residential development. There's always been the residential development that's being primarily driven by residential development. That here recently in the last year or so has really started to pick up the pace with more and more industries moving out into our area. And the suburbs continue to reach further and further out. The I-35 corridor, that's just incredible growth that we're starting to get more and more of that moving into our territory. So good, solid, steady growth. I can't say that it's really ramped up significantly in the last 10 years. It's just been steady the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to inquire about your broadband business. Is that a profit center or is it a service?
No, sir. It's turned into a profit center. We've been in the internet business for years, and we go back to 1998 when we had dial-up service, and the reason we got in the business way back when was because you couldn't get access to the internet without calling a long distance number. You had to call into San Antonio, but it was long distance for a lot of our customers, a lot of our members. And so we started the business, way back then, and started out with dial-up service, and then have been evolving over the years and using wireless technology, and now of course fiber to the home. But over the years, it's become a bigger and bigger part of the cooperative. As I mentioned, we serve 90,000 electric meters. Well, we serve 20,000 broadband customers, and so the revenues and the margins that are coming off of that certainly are becoming more and more of a profit center for us.
And last question in this area: what can you do to enhance that, and how much of it is also a social service? Do you have a lot of rural customers who still do not have broadband? We have 90,000 electric customers and 20,000 broadband. So there's obviously some people are getting it elsewhere or not getting it.
Right. No, very, very good point. So we started investing in fiber back in 2013. We found out that we could do it. We found out that we had the expertise to do it, and have continued to grow that particular side of the business. And we have a certain amount of an investment that we're willing to put in every year. It's generally around $10 to $15 million that we're putting in every year into fiber. So we're slowly over time building out that fiber infrastructure to more and more parts of our service area. Most of that is rural area. If you get back into the suburbs, a lot of that's already served, whether from the big telecom folks. And so we're not necessarily trying to compete with them. Our focus primarily is out in the rural areas. And so it's a long-term endeavor. Just like the electric grid was built out over many, many years, we're having to take steps along the way and investments along the way to try to reach more and more folks. Now, having said that, we do have high-speed wireless, and we call it high-speed wireless. It's certainly not fiber. It's about 25 megabits per second. So it's not horrible. You can do streaming like we're doing right here. You can do that off of the wireless technology that we're offering. We have that basically throughout our entire area. And some folks are taking advantage of it and some are not.
So Darren, as we move to the future and think about competition in battery storage, we know, for example, that Tesla has applied to be a provider of power in Texas. So the competition would change. And the business model is, okay, if you buy Tesla, then you will have a power plant in your house, and you will also have a storage plant in your house. And since Tesla will have so many customers, they will provide the electricity to their customers. So they will buy it wholesale and sell it to their customers retail. So let's say there's a new business model in the future. So you will lay where in that business model? Will Tesla buy the electricity from you as you purchase it from somebody else, or will they go to the source of the power? Well, we know that it would change significantly as Tesla has applied to become a provider of electricity in the state of Texas. Andreas, you might want to.
The key of the question is more, what do you think about it? Because, GVEC and all the co-ops and munis have a service territory monopoly on kilowatt hours. So Tesla cannot sell kilowatt hours there, but only in the competitive region where Encore and Centerpoint and AP and others provide service. But what are your thoughts, Darren, on what does this do to the business? I mean, are we looking at a paradigm shift dramatically? What's your take? I mean, we're speculating, obviously.
I think the technologies, whether it be Tesla with electric vehicles and being able to use those electric vehicles as storage, whether it be battery storage itself, it's more related to the customer having more and more control of their energy consumption and their energy production, for that matter. If they have the ability to have power flowing both ways from that vehicle, which is not quite there yet here in the States anyway, but when you get to that point, all of a sudden that vehicle becomes more valuable and being able to act like a battery. Our view is that we need to stay in touch with our members, our customers. We want to be the energy provider for them. Whether that means I'm buying power wholesale and selling it to them retail, or whether that means I'm managing their solar system on top of their house, or I'm managing that battery inside their house, that's where GVEC wants to find itself in the future, because more and more of those electrons are going to be produced locally, in our opinion.
Right.
And we want to find a way to stay involved as the energy business for that customer in their home and their business.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up. Do you offer financing to your customers for the in-home services?
We do, yeah, for solar, batteries, HVAC systems, we offer financing for sure.
So another quick question on another red herring. Ford Motor Company announces the Ford Lightning, F-150, which I put a down payment for, and I can run my house for 4 days from it. So if Snowmageddon of February happens again, I won't have a problem anymore if you don't provide me power. What's your take on Ford delivering that product? And I understand that they're going to build 80,000 of those in next year, and where things are coming. Apparently, all companies are gonna be there. Do you see these as a great opportunity for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's like any other technologies that we're dealing with. It's finding a way that we can take advantage of them and play a part in maintaining relevancy and maintaining the value of GVEC. How do we create that relevancy with our member, with our customer, with these new technologies vying for their attention and their energy dollars? Yeah. So that's the challenge.
So it sounds to me, and I'll switch to Llewelyn here in a moment, but last point I wanted to make and give us a sense. Sounds to me from your current data analytics effort and the fact that you're so focused on the customer, you are unlike many utilities that are vertically integrated. The vertically integrated utilities are always worried about transmission and production of utility scale generation, and they kind of treat their customers like ratepayers. It sounds to me like you treat your customers like customers and maybe more like partners, given that you're a co-op and their members. Give us a sense for that. How important is that today? That data, that interaction with the call center. What do you do that? Do you listen to those calls once in a while? Give us a sense of that importance.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's, I think it does have to do with being a cooperative, and that, those are not just our customers or our members, they own us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just have a different type of relationship with them. And here at GVEC, we truly do. We truly strive to, exceed their expectations. That's part of our mission statement, exceeding their expectations because of who they are. And that's why we're involved in a lot of this data analytics, because we want to know when we pick up the phone, we want to know who they are before we've even answered before they've even said a word. And we want to know whether they buy electricity from us, whether they buy internet from us, solar systems, or all three. And if we can know that as soon as we answer the phone, we can then be more proactive in how we interact with them and the services that we are able to offer them. And so all that's tying together, but it is, as you mentioned, it is absolutely tied to that customer and how do we better serve them. And if we do that, our belief is we do that over the long term, we can maintain that relationship and that relevancy with them as these technologies continue to evolve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Llewelyn, give me 30 seconds to do my commercial on Digital 360 Summit real quick. So we had our third annual conference in August of this year, and it was fantastic. And Darren happened to be one of the keynote speakers that joined the conference and in the smart energy and utilities panel. And we have announced that our conference will be September 6th through the 9th. We are still choosing a location. If all works out, it's probably going to be somewhere north of San Marcos, trending to Austin, and we're looking for a great time there. And these are the companies that have spoke and sponsored last year or earlier this year, and you can see the GVEC logo there. I also wanted to mention the GVEC is a Texas State CIEDAR member, actually the very first member of the consortium. And we're looking forward to working with Darren and his team on many projects that we have with Texas State related to solar panel production, energy storage, fuel cell, green hydrogen, and digital substation of the future projects. And I want to thank real quick Texas State University for sponsoring our Digital Roundtable. Llewelyn?
Yes, I wanted to ask you, Darren, very interesting what you're doing. Are you adding what I call aftermarket services, things to the smart meter to make it smarter? Companies like Tantalus are offering additions to the meter. They're not alone. And I mentioned Tantalus because they're really aiming their effort at rural electric cooperatives. Are you doing that to enhance the quality and the amount of data you can get?
I would have to say not at this point. We're not there yet on the metering side. We certainly have smart meters. We're able to get the data from them. We can ping meters. We can disconnect meters remotely. But getting actual real time getting data is not there. We have lots of data that we can get from the meters themselves, whether it be voltage or drops and things of that nature. But it's a matter of going and inquiring of that meter and pulling it back. So I'm not probably not exactly what you're speaking of.
Okay, I want to do a little speculation or a little guesswork here, and that is there's an expectation in the utility industry that an enormous reserve of electricity will be available through electric vehicles. So they will be really the best kind of storage you can get, and that people will plug in, and when there's a dip in the available voltage, and this may be accelerated with, as Andre said, with the F-150. I've just written a column on it. John S. Butler, I referred in this column to Andres as a polymath. Will that upset you?
No, it won't upset me, but we'll talk about that later. We have to be distinguished.
Back to this idea that this is all going to work smoothly, but I wonder who's going to pay for it. If you regularly run down a battery in an F-150 or any other vehicle, a Tesla, it doesn't matter, it's going to shorten the life of that battery. Therefore, the electricity being provided in an emergency or on a routine basis to the utility has a cost to the provider. Will that have to be compensated? Will it be a kind of net metering all over again?
Yeah, that's way beyond me at this point. As far as who ultimately is going to pay for it, how's that consumer going to be paid? The individual who's sitting there with that F-150 who has it plugged in, and the utility or whoever is pulling the power out of it onto the grid, and how they're compensated. That's something that I think we're a ways from being able to understand how that ultimately all plays out.
I have a quick question, piggybacking on the audience asking me a question. Clearly we got 900 co-ops, some 2,000 munis, and some 400 investor-owned utilities. Co-ops and munis play a fundamental role for the sort of the broadness and the pervasiveness of the grid everywhere. If we could play for 30 seconds here a game called Money is Not an Object, and you had access to 20 or 30 billion dollars of money, Darren, will you couple up a bunch of co-ops together? What would that look like?
Yeah, I don't know that I would do that. Co-ops are unique in that, if you look across the country,
right,
in that most of the areas that they serve are very rural.
Right.
That's why you have 900 co-ops. If you look at the average size of a co-op, you're probably talking about 20,000 meters or so.
Mm-hmm.
That's the average. Out of those 900, that's the average.
Right.
So they're just still very small, but they play a very important role. If you look across from a geographic perspective across the nation,
Mm-hmm.
cooperatives serve the vast majority of the geographic region.
Yeah.
That's probably not where I would put my money and going and acquiring a bunch of co-ops and putting it all.
Let me ask you a different flavor of a different question. So electrification is happening, is undoubtedly, BMW announced yesterday that they're shutting down their internal combustion engine production in Germany by 2024. Imagine that. That means BMW is going all electric, okay? So the electrification of transportation is a done deal. It is happening. Hundreds of billions of dollars are going into it. We're not turning around. So that means that your strategy of the home is key, and your service territory is huge. And I imagine will continue to grow at an accelerated pace because of the growth of Austin in the corridor. And pretty soon, today you service Seguin, but there are probably 10, 15 cities that you all together.
Right.
Small.
Small.
Right. So all those cities are going to start growing, and all those cities need a smart city strategy. They need broadband. They need connectivity. They need to be part of the smart utility of the future, right? What do you feel about those forces? How do you sense that what's going to happen with GVEC headquarters? Are all those city mayors and city managers going to come and partner with you in the next 10 years in a different way than they see you today? Do you see them asking you to partner up and provide smart city services that they need that they don't have? Anything like that happening?
Yeah, we're already doing some of that with one of the local communities that we serve. In fact, it's where our true headquarters is, the Gonzales, a small town, about 7,000 people. They have their own little municipal utility there. And, you know, we got to a point where operating their system on their own just wasn't financially viable. It made a lot more sense. We're right next door. We have our own bucket trucks. We have our own linemen, our own digger trucks, to just start managing that for them. And so we actually operate and maintain the system for them. And with that relationship, now it's grown into doing some automated meter reading for them. And so, and pushing those technologies into the city. I do foresee that's gonna continue to grow in the future, just because of, you have to have some level of size to be able to invest in these technologies, and the labor force that it takes to be able to operate and maintain these types of technologies is at a different level. And so, you know, I think there'll be opportunities for us to continue to partner with them for those reasons.
Right.
You know, I find it very interesting. Darren, my father, like you, have degrees in agriculture, and he was a county agent.
Yeah.
And he did rural electricity, where everybody was, for the most part, they were independent. So as the technology evolved, can you imagine in any way that this independence will return for small cities? Can you imagine that like the family farm was completely independent in the early days? And as you know better than me, the rural electricity, all of the, they came together in co-ops.
Right, right.
And so what would be the future of the people who would say, I'm actually getting off of the grid, my house will be totally independent. And so you're kind of back to the future of when I went with my father to farms in southern Louisiana. Everything was running off of a windmill. Electricity was there when needed. Do you see with the application of many of the technology, including the Tesla, you're back to the future kind of situation?
Yeah. I think it's a long ways off. If that were to happen, I think we're a long ways from it. I think it works in today's world anyway. It works better with the interconnectivity of it, and to be able to share the resources. To be completely independent, completely off the grid. There's some risk associated with that as well. Just not having that redundancy, sitting there with that wire feeding into your house. I think if we were to get to there, I think it's a long ways off. But I can certainly see how the technology is evolving in such a way that, you know, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, where it may very well be that there are no more wires.
Well, let me put it another way. Will the wealthy be able to pay what they want to pay and provide? You know, we like to think of your industry as being, you know, the lights come on, it's cheap and et cetera. But there's a segment of American people who would buy that BMW electricity for that car for $200,000. There's a segment of the population that would pay $5 million for a house. So it would be a market for the wealthy. I'm sorry, Llewelyn, in your world, but the wealthy must live too.
I thought you were talking about yourself. Have you put down the $200,000 for the electric Mercedes or just a deposit?
Is it possible for the wealthy to have a whole different life around electricity?
I've seen you. I know.
Darren, is it possible for the wealthy to have a whole different life around electricity than Llewelyn gang, we'll put it like that?
Then of course the wealthy can dress it up by pretending to be university professors. Gives them a certain moral legitimacy.
Well, yes, but that's a different question. I want to understand what Darren has to say. I mean, if there's some people who are willing to pay for whatever it takes, it doesn't matter. These are the same people who's going to buy Andre's a BMW, the same people who doesn't mind, it doesn't matter. Is there a market for the wealthy that would be different from the market of the rest of the population in electricity? Can we create a market for that?
Yes, we see it today. We see it today, and you know, there's certainly folks who have the means to be able to install significant amounts of solar, some significant number of batteries in their homes, and they're willing to do it. From a cost perspective, is it the least cost? No way.
Okay.
But from a control perspective, having the ability to have that in their homes and know it's there, there are folks, and there is a market that we see that they will spend the money just so they have the control over it.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Llewelyn. You can now take the you can take the stand.
I yield to you. I mean, money has its own articulation.
Well, I do think that as we think about electricity, we need to think it in markets like we do automobiles, like we do housing, and like we do clothing. I think there would be a great market for individuals who have the means to pay for whatever they need to have their electricity come on, and costs become the non-factor.
Yeah.
And I think in the future, as we discussed at the Digital 360 Company Summit, in the future, it would be a huge market, Darren, for your industry.
I find this very interesting, and Johnny, you're quite right. For a long time, I mean, for 40 years, I've been trying to think up value added for electricity. I ran a conference on it once, and all people would come up with, it was the early days of green power, was green power. People would pay more for it, therefore it could be value added. But basically, people wanted a vanilla electron. But now we found a way when there is value added in the electricity space, and that is with this, industrialized house that will survive without being on the net, but it's not big enough. I'm asking you, Darren, do you see any value added? You've done something with broadband. I used to have a contract from the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association to talk to utilities, your fellow utilities, and most of them were reluctant about getting into telephones. A few did, but most were reluctant. So you're really ahead of the game there. Do you see any other value-added things where you're good at something, why not do it in another way? You're good at digging holes and drawing fiber, you're good at drawing cables. Do you see any other adventures ahead for electric utilities that could change the business model?
Yeah, whether it's electric utilities or cooperatives or certainly GVEC. I've already mentioned solar. We're involved in solar, so we sell it, we install it. Batteries, we sell them, we install them. Home automation, energy controls where it's thermostats. We have thermostat programs where we're getting in and being able to work with the member customer. With thermostat controls, other types of controls on energy products like water heaters, pool pumps, whatever it may happen to be, that we then have more visibility inside the home, but also can use the control of those devices to play a part into our overall power supply structure. That's where I think the real value comes in, and that's where I think we're headed. It just takes some time, and the technology has to be there.
Quick question, Darren, on electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. Do you have many public stations that you have built yourself, or how is that happening?
We don't. I mean, we've got 2 fast chargers that we put in place along Interstate 10. One's here at the office here in Seguin. The other one's at another office that we have on Interstate 10. Those are true fast chargers that you can go and plug in and be charged up in 30 minutes or less. And we have other smaller chargers that are at all of our locations. But we haven't stretched out beyond that. Now, we do promote them. We do offer rebates to our members who want to install them. We will sell you a charger and install it at your house. We have our electricians come to your house and install them for you. So we are promoting them in that way.
Yeah,
And view that as a growing market as well.
sure. No, like
We really
clearly,
want to know where they are. So the issue is we want to know
right.
where those chargers are. And we want to make sure that, first of all, you're not charging your car at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in August. We don't want that. So we want to be able to have some say over when you're charging that car, at least from a price perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think it's obviously in rural America, pickup trucks and SUVs rule the day. And so maybe you guys will get inundated with requests starting, February or March of 2022 when the F-150 is available. But I think that you are so ahead of your time. And I am so bullish about GVEC all the time. And I remember the first time we met, you were educating me on how green and how efficient you are. Remind us of those numbers and where you guys are on that journey of being super green and super efficient for your members.
Yeah, well, so, and that's, let's call it green, call it what you want. I mean, that's not, our drive again is giving the customer what they want. Yep. So we have about 16 megawatts of rooftop solar in our service area, which again, may not sound like that much, but on a per capita basis, we have the most solar within our service area of any utility in Texas. So we're proud of that. We're installing more and more every day. Battery storage now, we've installed almost a megawatt of distributed battery storage inside of our service area. Mm-hmm. And that's just in a very, very short period of time over the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine. Go ahead.
Let me just understand this. That is diversified. These are private homes installations. There's no utility scale solar on your system.
We only have one. We have one small 2 megawatt utility scale solar, but everything else, like 16 megawatts, is all distributed rooftop solar. And then on top of that, we have the battery, another megawatt of battery storage. So
I think that's very interesting because I think there's going to be an issue for land use. There already is here in Rhode Island, which is not a large, where we have quite a lot of agricultural land that's been given over to utility scale solar, and people don't like it.
I bet not.
And for those of you in the audience who know about Rhode Island, that is East Texas, just a little farther east of Paris, Texas.
It's a state which is slightly smaller than Darren's service area.
Yeah. I can see why they'd be concerned about land. It does take a lot of land. It really does.
Yeah. Darren, I'm curious. In my opinion, having had worked at Austin Energy from 2003 to 2010 and done all the work that we did there, we're still super proud of all that work because it's really birthed so many things. Texas is growing at a very fast pace, and John Butler always says that people move to Texas, but they don't bring their power grid with them. I think that, we're going to go from 30 million to 60 million people in the next 30 or 40 years. The exodus from California is off the charts. The exodus from some places in New England territory are off the charts. What are you doing differently, if anything, around planning for the next 3 or 5 years? Are you changing anything at all? How do you keep your fingers on the dike on that? Because I think that the numbers are staggering.
Yeah, they are. And you think about the amount of power that is going to have to be built or produced somehow here in ERCOT. And it is a huge concern longer term.
Hey guys, I thought I did.
And
I jokingly tell people, hold that thought. I jokingly tell people there are 26 million registered vehicles in Texas. And if the fate of the combustion engine is real, as a BMW has put a stake on its own ground in Germany about it, Those 26 million Texas vehicles will be electric someday. It may take 10, 20 years for that swapping to happen, however long. But if they all had a 100 kilowatt hour battery each, that would be 26,000 gigawatts. And that is a significant amount of energy compared to what we produce in ERCOT, which is only 80 gigawatts. Obviously, they're not going to charge at the same time and all that, and so you know, it's really, well, did I say 26,000? It's 2,600 gigawatts, 2,600 gigawatts, and it's still, you know, where is that energy going to come from? So, what is your take as the grid operator? There's a big aspiration that we're going to go carbon neutral, zero carbon by 2030, 2040, 2050, depending on who you're listening to on the microphone across the screen. What is your take on base load, renewable energy, intermittent energy, the home being part of that equation? Is that a slam dunk? Is it easy to go 100% non-carbon? Can we do it today? Do we know how to do it today? What would be your honest answer on that?
No, I think we're a long ways from it, Andres. I mean, it's with the growth that we're experiencing, there's going to have to be some of these traditional resources. I don't know that technology is going to be able to move fast enough. Could be wrong, to be able to keep up with the growth. And, you know, you speak of all the vehicles and all of them being, you know, electric and being able to feed onto the grid and take off the grid. I just think we're a long ways from that. But, you know, a long ways can go by really quick. So right. One of the things I talk to my employees all the time about, you know, when we talk about changing industries, you know, I remind them when I was a young man, I didn't have a cell phone. And then, you know, all of a sudden, a few years later, I'm sitting there with an iPhone in my hand, and it felt like it happened overnight, but really it was 10 or 15 or 20 years. The same thing's going to happen to us, you know, on the electric side, where all these changes are happening to us, and we're going to look back 20 years from now, and our industry is going to look completely different.
Right.
It's going to have to, and what the technologies are demanding it, they are allowing it. The consumer is going to demand it. Whether or not it is such a dramatic shift that we're able to move away from traditional utility structures, it's just hard for me to imagine.
Yeah. In closing, go ahead, Llewelyn.
Would you like me to ask a question or issue a corrective statement for John Sibley Butler?
Either or, we got time.
It's very difficult to see how we're going to get from here to there in terms of electric supply. At some point, we're going to have, it would seem to me, some substantial amount of central generation or an awful lot more diversified generation, which sort of brings in nuclear. But nuclear has no constituency in America today. What are your feelings about that, Darren?
I agree. It would be ideal if you get it done, but in today's political climate and in today's investment climate, for that matter, it's hard for me to imagine you get it done. I know that folks have tried it out in Georgia, and it is extremely risky, high cost endeavor to try to get done. And with all these other technologies that are coming in, I have a hard time believing it will happen.
I'd like finally to ask you the subject of how are you doing with resiliency?
Our grid here in this part of Texas is very strong. If that's what we're speaking of, is from a power supply perspective, from a outage perspective. We've been through Hurricane Harvey, which did reach up into our service area. We had a little damage from that event, but we're able to get power back on relatively quickly. We just experienced the winter storm, and from a structural perspective, our system held up very well. certainly had our few minor issues, but we did very well there. So from a resiliency perspective, from the quality of the grid, our grid, we feel very strong about it. Very good about it.
Thank you.
Do you have your on top of your head your SAIDI and SAIDI numbers?
Yeah, Katie this year is an hour and 30 minutes or is that maybe say, I'm sorry, that may be Sadie, Andreas. I may mix them up there. We have them documented, but they're
okay.
You know, yeah.
All right. Yeah. John, any final thoughts, comments?
This has been a great conversation about the future. Great conversation about a wonderful, wonderful business person who understands customer satisfaction and relating to the customer.
And he's an Aggie.
And what else can we end on? Goodbye to Texas University.
Oh, here we go.
So long to the orange and white, and it's good luck to the dear old Texas Aggies.
There we go.
They are the ones who said the real old fight. The eyes of Texas are up on you. That is the song they sing so well. Sounds like hell.
There you go.
Goodbye to Texas University. We gonna be I say that as I look at the
I
Texas
hope you're
Tower.
not sitting in your office right there. They're going to kick you out.
Well, I don't think they're gonna. As I watch the Texas Tower, it's gonna be good to rejoin our great university over there. But and I hope to see you in Baton Rouge. As I went to LSU and played in a Tiger band for 4 years, and we used to play the Aggie fight song. Back when I was in school, we played the Aggie. So it's going to be a wonderful thing to have, the Longhorns and the Aggies hook up again, and
That will be.
it'll be wonderful. And good luck with your business. I like your forward thinking. I like your use of data to stay customer centric. Is what I got of this from this discussion. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be with you.
I'd like to concur. It sounds like you have a very interesting, forward-looking and successfully, and that you are successfully managing the challenges of today. So Darren, it's been very informative and interesting and fun.
I'm delighted to say that Darren is so forward thinking that he recruited Texas State to help him with any unforeseeable challenges coming forward. The man has a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. I would give him all the money. Go find out what GVZ is all about. Darren Schauer, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.